All right, so like I said, we would come back and go into a little more information so you could hear directly from Stefan's mouth on just what he was going through when he was in the hospital and how he was feeling. So I pretty much left off at the part where right after you had that crisis and they gave you the IV of the hydrocortisone and you started feeling better. You said you wanted to brush your teeth and then you wanted to get washed up. Actually, you wanted to take a shower.
Right, I felt like an old hobo. So, I just wanted to have something going on, where I could feel, I gotta take this call right quick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, David, how you doing?
Okay, we're back. All right, so yeah, you were saying you felt like a dirty hobo.
Hobo. I felt like a hobo. Do you hear me? And so I just really wanted to just try to just get some sort of sanity. You know what I mean? Being in the bed for so long, the hospital bed, it just felt weird. So yeah.
And I was telling them how you weren't yourself normally, because normally you're so like Mr. groomed up and everything. And you didn't want to do that really before. You didn't really want to wash up or brush your teeth. Like, you could care less about that stuff. You just wanted to sleep.
Yeah.
And curl up under the covers.
Yeah, give me my little pee bucket, turn over, drip, 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 drip. And then, but that was a weird period in my life. It was like I just, I don't know. I just didn't have energy for anything. I just kind of wanted to just get through it the best way I could, without knowing how to really do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so they lowered he felt great, like to the point where he really did feel like he could take a shower. And he wanted to do the orthostatic blood pressure test, which is where they do the laying down and sitting up and standing up and see if his blood pressure dropped. He was like, I want to do that now because I feel so good. But they weren't having that at that point. They were scared to let you do anything after that scare.
Yeah.
So they didn't do it like for a couple days, I think, at that point. But they did start lowering the hydrocortisone dose, and they went down to 50 twice a day, still through the IV. And then I think it was the 25 and then the 10 and the 5 or something like that. But then you started not feeling you started not feeling good again. And if I remember correctly, the nausea started coming back again.
Yeah, and I don't think I was eating at that point either. Yeah, so that didn't help, because I wasn't eating. And the hospital food when I first got there was good. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then all of a sudden it just started becoming not good, and then I didn't want anything, and then coupled that with the medication, that wasn't helping, because I needed some sort of, food on my system. And
yeah, it was just like, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like you just needed to be home and just get some TLC, and be comfortable. But we couldn't get him home because his blood pressure wasn't normalizing, which that is because, number one, they weren't doing the fludrocortisone, thinking that was what was causing you to be nauseous. But really, you were nauseous because you were in the crisis mode. Because you weren't getting enough hydrocortisone. And number two, they weren't giving enough hydrocortisone because what we ended up finding out later from another doctor, which we'll get into, is you can take more hydrocortisone to make up for not having the fludrocortisone and be able to function, basically. And you weren't getting that. So he just wasn't getting what he needed. And I remember leaving the hospital, and it was just like, because I was on a high, because you were feeling so much better and I could see the difference. You were talking, you were asking about the kids and being your normal self, and then I saw the decline happening again, and it was just like a gut punch. Every time it's like you make progress and then the decline starts, and it's just like a gut punch. So that was a gut punch. So I was so defeated, and I remember leaving the hospital and I was fearing for your life at that point too, because I felt like that unit didn't know, they didn't understand the seriousness of it, and I felt like they didn't get that information fully from the other unit, maybe just a little glimpse of it, but not really. So they still weren't listening to what I was telling them, which is the standard protocol that you do in this situation, that we shouldn't be reducing the hydrocortisone yet. But they weren't listening, and they were like talking on the phone with an endocrinologist, because endocrinologists don't come to the hospital. So he couldn't talk to the endocrinologist and I couldn't. So they were. So it was all this secondhand, third-hand information, and I knew he wasn't getting the care he needed, and I knew they didn't have the I remember the rapid response nurse on the other unit said, right after that happened, he said, we need to have that 100 milligrams of hydrocortisone. I think he called it PRN, which means like on hand. So if something happens, they have it available, because it can be life or death if they don't get it to you quick enough. And I remember saying something about that, and they kind of just blew it off. And then sure enough, remember the night that you called me and your heart was racing? They didn't understand the Addison's crisis or adrenal crisis.
That's when they were giving me the morphine.
Yeah, they didn't understand. They didn't recognize. They didn't recognize the signs that you look for to know if someone is in crisis. So they didn't understand that. So because of that, they weren't treating him properly. They should have been giving him extra hydrocortisone to help him get out of the crisis mode and recover, and they weren't. Nausea is one of the symptoms. The low blood pressure is a symptom. The extreme fatigue is a symptom. And the sleeping is also a symptom. And also the anxiety feeling can be a symptom of when you're in crisis. And so remember that night you called me, and you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just felt like I felt anxious, felt like my heart was racing a little bit, like I just felt, like I felt uncomfortable, and then it started, in my chest. And, I was letting the people know, at the hospital, I don't feel right. I don't feel right, just something, and I felt like I was having chest pains, so.
And that was after visiting hours, so I couldn't even go or be there.
Yeah, that was from, and I'd never had that feeling. Obviously performing and doing what I do, it's kind of like I thrive on that feeling, it's kind of like what, it's like an adrenaline rush, you want that feeling, and it's what pumps you. But recently it's what almost is a negative, because it affects me to the point where it becomes a distraction, and I can't focus because I feel, that anxiety, you know what I mean? And
is it scary?
It's not scary, but it's just distracting, because I can't move on. I can't say, oh, okay, I remember that feeling, I use it to fuel me. No, it's like, okay, now it's distracting, where it's like, it's affecting me physically versus mentally,
You need water? Sounds like you do. Sorry. I know.
Got my water.
That's what I do. That's a big jug of water. So, what did they give you?
They gave me morphine, couple doses, in my arm. And I'm like, I had to ask her after the second time, I'm like, yeah, this ain't helping, I ain't trying to be, Pookie from New Jack City, so I just felt like they kind of made it worse, unfortunately. And so, but I called you. I think that's when you were on speaker, and you were just praying and, trying to help relax.
Calm down and relax.
And at that point, I just kind of fell asleep with, you in my ear.
Yeah. And the nurse, she was amazing, by the way. She helped me stay relaxed. She was very informative, and she's the one who called me initially, just letting me know this was going on. So I thank God for her. But she, you don't remember her name, do you? Yeah, I don't either, sorry. But she ordered the hydrocortisone shot. And because they didn't have it PRN where it was on hand, she had to wait for the pharmacy to approve it and all that. And that took at least an hour, right? And if he had went into a real serious crisis where he was non-responsive, like what happened the day before, they could have lost him. So that's where I was so on edge, knowing that they were not prepared for serious emergencies with this condition. So anyways, she gave you that hydrocortisone shot once she got it. And then I was praying in your ear, and I think all that just helped you, and you eventually fell asleep. So, but when I left the hospital that day, where I had noticed your health was declining and everything, which was maybe like the next day, and I knew they still weren't listening to me and what I was suggesting, being the one, and it's not like I'm a doctor, but I at least have researched this and was in a couple support groups talking to people every day who have this and have had it for years. So I was just concerned. I wasn't sure if he was going to make it out of there alive. It's honestly how I felt. And I couldn't let that happen. So I left and I called the endocrinologist that we had never spoke with, but that's who they were consulting with, and that's who they were planning to refer us to, but he had to get released. And so when I called, I was crying, and I was just like, I'm so scared. I'm afraid they're gonna I fear for his life in the hospital. Like, I gotta get him out of there, and I need to get him in to see the doctor there, you know, the endocrinologist and all of that. And the nurse was nice, but she was just like, well, we need to get the referral from his primary doctor. And she was just going down that road. And it was kind of like, you know, once he gets in here, we can help, but there's really nothing we can do, you know, kind of that. And I got to the point where I was like, we got to get you out of there. Like, I felt like what kind of movie is it where you got to like escape out of the hospital?
Right. Like John Q. Just do something.
Yes.
We need to get you out of here.
Yes, I was panicking. And so you had got back to the point where you were just sleeping all day. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember. I don't think you were eating. No.